Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a slightly older replay. This one is from version 6.15. So I've been sitting on it for a little while and I honestly don't know why. It's a pretty good game if I do say so myself. So this is the Shiratsuyu, the tier 7 of the Gunboat line of Japanese destroyers, which up until pretty recently, in fact very recently, has been almost a bit of a misnomer because it's pretty much just the Akizuki that fulfills the role of being a gunboat in any way. The two that come before it, well, they're not so different from what you might think of as being the main branch, the torpedo line, if we can put it that way. However, that is going to be changing in the relatively near future because, as of recording this, the Kitakaze and the Harugumo, tier 9 and 10 respectively, are currently under testing. But I'm not going to be talking about those today. It's just a little coincidental thing that this turns out to be somewhat good timing, me deciding to use this replay now of all times. So it's a tier 8 game, and as this is an older game, well, there's not millions of radars, although I am getting either hydroed or radared at the moment, and it's probably hydro because the Z46 has been spotted going behind that island, and I'm almost certainly going to be within range. There's also a carrier in play, but yeah, as far as radar goes, well, anyone playing at the moment with the introduction of the US light cruisers will know that there's quite a bit of it around at the moment. And it makes life a bit more awkward, especially when it comes to contesting caps, because there are a lot of maps where there's sufficient cover for radar ships to just sit nearby and perform area denial. And if there's enough radar ships doing that, they can basically just permanently deny 2-3 cap circles at a time. And so the role of the destroyer becomes greatly reduced, and it's not necessarily the most fun thing to play at the moment, but my hope is that it'll die down a bit and we'll get fewer people playing these things, and it'll get back to a more normal level. So as you've noted probably by now, I'm using the torpedo reload booster consumable on this particular ship, or at least I was for this particular match. I have since then actually unlocked the Akizuki, but I've never bought it to play with, and whether I do or not sort of depends on what they do with the tier 9 and 10 under testing at the moment, because I really hope they're not in their final state right now. But as I said, we're not here to speak about those today. So I'm just at the moment hoping maybe to catch somebody with torpedoes. And as for the rest of the team, everybody's piled onto the C cap. It's a bit of an awkward looking situation, to be sure. If we can take back the B cap, then that will improve matters a lot. But at the moment we have so many ships just piled into C that if they don't move out of there and start effectively tackling the enemy team, then we're going to have problems. Now I am in a division with Fu was here, one of my Patreon supporters, who at this stage is pushing towards the A cap, and I can't tell you why at this at this far off juncture, having played this game many moons ago. I'm not sure why he'd backed off, and I think I probably had told him that maybe that wasn't the best plan. So he's turning around at this point, and I've come over to support him because there is another German destroyer around somewhere, but also it maybe gives me some opportunities to do a bit more damage in the process. And it's not necessarily a completely silly idea to try and open up an angle to get an unexpected line of fire on the enemy team, but well, even in a battleship you can only stand so much punishment, and making yourself an isolated target it's not usually the best plan, especially if you can't stealth up in between. And I think, especially because there is this destroyer nearby, that's just not an option. Even if he's got the full stealth build on his Duke of York there, there's no way he's going to be able to not be spotted by that Z52 over there. And the other downside of putting himself in an isolated position compared to the rest of the team is that he's made himself a very attractive target for the enemy carrier, who has now sent their full strike after them. And this is a bit of a problem for me as well, because, well, I was firing anyway, and oh, there we go. Nice hit on the Missouri there. I was firing anyway, but of course now I'm just going to be air spotted, so there's no hope of me either stealthing up at this point, not anytime soon anyway. Pay attention to the damage counter, by the way. That Missouri must have extinguished a fire recently. And it's paying off dividends. That one torpedo hit with one flooding, it's racking up quite nicely at this point. So I don't want to get into a close range fight with this. Did I say Z52? No, it says Z23. Obviously it says Z23. Anyway, unfortunately, there goes Fu and his Duke of York, and although the carrier has lost some planes in the process, they've actually got this one squad with some torpedoes left, so they're going to try and drop on me. So not only have I got this destroyer to try and dodge, not only am I being air spotted, but I've now also got to try and not get torpedoed from the air as well. Although fortunately for me, because it's only the half squad, it's a bit easier to dodge. All the while that was going on, that Missouri was flooding out, so that's a nice little bonus kill for me, and I'm now up to 50k damage as a result of one torp hit. That's why you don't extinguish a single fire, especially if you think there's going to be destroyers around. If you're going to burn out from the single fire, well, at that point you've got other problems anyway, but generally speaking, it's a bad idea, as that Missouri just proved. So without any real expectation, I dropped that one set of torps into the water, and about 30 seconds later, well, there we go. I can't really complain about that, can I? That was one of those random drops that you make because just why not, and it paid off. That eliminates a rather large problem for me, and it was a bit of a fluke, but it is certainly very, very helpful. At this stage, we are actually ahead of the enemy team on kills. It's not looking too bad. And then you glance down at the minimap and you realise that 3 of our team, and bear in mind, you know, the team total size is 12. 3 of our 12 represents a full quarter of our team. Went all the way down south chasing after a single destroyer. And they're now all the way down on the IJ line. And one of them has just flooded out. So they are completely out of the equation for the time being. So that just leaves me, the Izumo, and our Z46, and whatever support our carrier can bring to bear. Now I'm not going to be too harsh on those ships that did go down south. I mean, the battleship should not have been there. I don't know why there was a Bismarck down there. They did take out the destroyer, and those cruisers in particular are going to be important later on. But still, having a quarter of your team chase off to the bottom of the map against a single enemy ship, it's not the best move ever. It really isn't. And meanwhile, well, me and this Z46 have got to contend with being not constantly air spotted, but air spotted enough to be a problem, and we've now also got several ships chasing after us as well. The carrier, meanwhile, they're going after that Pensacola, and they've just done a bit of damage, and the Iowa's finished off by taking them out, which is fine, but they're not quite in a position to help us at the moment with these 2 battleships, who are slightly worryingly close. And this is where the torpedo reload booster is going to come in quite useful indeed, because it means I'm just going to be able to get that many more torpedoes away. They know I'm here though, and if they're sensible, they're going to be juking and dodging and not going in straight lines and doing their best to avoid getting hit by torpedoes, and the Nagato certainly is. The Alabama, on the other hand, well, they're only going to take 1 of these, but that's certainly some damage they couldn't afford to take necessarily. It is just me at this point, by the way. They've finished off that Z46, as I'm sure you noticed. So, air spotted once again. I'm going to have to do some furious dodging right now because they are both going to be wanting me dead. And it did occur to me, by the way, that there's an interesting parallel going on here. We had several ships go chasing off way down south after an enemy destroyer. Well, now I've got several enemy ships doing exactly the same thing to me. They're not going to chase me quite so far, however, but this is pulling them away from the cap circles. It is giving my teammates a chance to actually potentially regain the cap, because they've really managed to pull ahead of us on points. They've got the couple of kills that they needed to get, and because they've had 2/3 of the cap circles for such a long time, it's really starting to stack up against us. We're going to need to get a shift on if we want to make this a win. And, well, it helps when you not get lucky exactly, but it was a good enough prediction with this drop, and they've now gotten distracted by the Iowa coming up from the south that maybe they got a bit complacent, but that's another couple of hits into the Nagato. No strikes on the Alabama, however, but with the hit I managed earlier and the fact that the fighters are buzzing around trying to spot me, that gives our carrier enough of a window of opportunity to sneak in and get the kill on the Alabama, although they had taken some damage from elsewhere. We've lost the Iowa in the meantime, though, so it's now just me, the cruisers, and our carrier. There's also an enemy Missouri who is only just now, it seems like, making an appearance. They've been over by the ACAP for quite a while, I guess, so we're going to have to deal with them at some point as well, but obviously, for now, the by far closer threat is the Nagato. Now, the enemy carrier's not doing a terrible thing right now. They're trying to actively keep me spotted with their fighters, but because they're doing that, it does impede their ability somewhat to protect against our carrier's strikes. Although, I think both carriers were probably not running low at this point, but I don't know if they could field entirely full squads. So that was a rather short fight. Our Lexington just completely lost their planes there, unfortunately. But I've been able to get into the cap with not any further molestation happening from the Nagato, and a couple of torp hits in the meanwhile as well. So if I can get this cap uninterrupted, that's going to be a good thing. And if I can get this Nagato kill, that's going to be even better. And it looks like... and I don't know if I was just getting lucky or if my guesswork was just absolutely on point when I was playing this game, because when it comes to dropping torpedoes, my success is far from consistent. But in this particular game, yeah, I was doing it right, apparently. And I'm not sure why, at this point, by the way, I was circling round in the open where the Missouri could shoot at me. That was not particularly wise, because they have just shot at me and they have gotten the reset. But now the Nagato's out of the way, there is no reason not to get behind the island. Not that there was any reason why I wasn't doing that to begin with, but now I really do have to. I can't afford to let this Missouri just keep resetting me. The Hipper, however, is in a far more perilous position. Look how much health they have left. A couple of secondary hits and they are done, basically. We've also got the Shores left alive as well. Fortunately, they do have rather more hit points, but we are so close on victory points, and we're getting down to it on time now enough that even a single cruiser kill could absolutely make the difference. So that's the cap. I've actually gotten some plane kills in this one. Maybe that's the most remarkable thing about this replay. 4 air kills with a Japanese destroyer that isn't in Akizuki. It's, yeah, it's not a common sight. The Akizuki itself does have really good AA, but in order for it to be effective AA, it has to go all in. It has to have a manual AA spec. And to have a manual AA spec, you're having to give up on either Concealment Expert or IFHE, either of which is a really big thing to give away on the Akizuki. So Yeah, I don't know. That's one thing the Akizuki, like theoretically, it's really good at is compared to all the other Japanese destroyers, is its AA capability. But in practice, you are sacrificing a hell of a lot to actually get that. So this Missouri is on the way down. They've been hit by, I think, our carrier, and we've got the Hipper and the Shaw's also opening up on them. So if he goes down, even if we lose the Hipper, the trade between a battleship's worth of points for a cruiser's worth of points will still come out in our favour. But as it is, the Hipper survives on just that sliver of health, and here we are. We do catch sight of the carrier just before the end, but we're going to tick to 1,000 points. There we go, and that's going to give us the game. So, yeah, as I said, I think that was a pretty decent game. That is certainly one of the better Japanese destroyer games I've ever had. The damage wasn't spectacular, but 2,500 base XP is pretty good. And just the last couple of players, that Hipper especially, hanging on to life with just a shred of hit points, just the last couple of players were able to somehow take this losing game and turn it around to be a win. But there was a weird symmetry going on there, wasn't there? Our ships chasing down south and their ships chasing after me up north. If either of those things hadn't happened, you know, this could have been a very different result. But who knows? You can, of course, you know, sit and speculate all day long as to how a match might have worked out. But anyway, that's less interesting than seeing how the match actually did work out, I guess. So, hopefully you have enjoyed this replay. And if you have, you can hit the like button. You can leave any comments below. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already. And, as always, stay tuned for more.